Welcome to the Ascension Path with Twin Essence. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Marley, and we're your Starseed Lightworker and Psychic Medium hosts.
We're identical twins with spiritual abilities and Starseed missions on Earth. On the Ascension Path, we discuss what it's like to be identical twins serving in a spiritual capacity and provide insights into our work as Starseeds. We create a sacred space to receive channeled messages, intuitive teachings, and expansive conversations that elevate your frequency and support your evolution. Join us to learn about navigating the path to Ascension and becoming the most authentic, aligned version of you. Take what resonates and leave the rest. As we continue journeying through Earth's inception, we've covered quite a few galactic founders already. So we have our Lyrans, our Sirians, our Orions, and then we last spoke about Pleiadians. Now we are moving to the Arcturian Star, and we are going to talk about Arcturian star beings. So Arcturus is a very bright star that you can find at the end of the Big Dipper constellation. So it's not part of the Big Dipper constellation, but the end of the Big Dipper points to where Arcturus is. It's a very bright star. Oftentimes it's called a red, yellow, or orange giant star. I think it's one of the brightest stars in the night sky. It makes sense that it's very bright because most of the traits we talk about or how Arcturians come through to us relates heavily to light and non-physical form. When we talk about Arcturians, we don't see Arcturians having the same role that we've seen Sirians and Lyrans and Orions have on Earth, especially the Pleiadians as well. So Arcturians take on that non-physical form. And what does that actually look like when it comes to humanity and Earth? Well, it looks like light. It looks like very bright light, and this is one of the hallmarks of Arcturians, is showing up with this beacon of light. Some people liken it to a train light or the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the imagery of what they're showing me right now is the tunnel and this very bright light. Maybe you see like little figures, but it's too bright to actually tell what's coming through and stepping forward for you. And that's the Arcturian trademark. Now, Arcturians are not, I would say, as heavily involved in Earth's creation. They're not necessarily creating physical forms like we've talked about with the previous galactic founders. They're not necessarily seeding on Earth, I would say, even as much as the other galactic founders, but they serve as this higher dimensional, transitional being, is what I will refer to it as. So I think of it as like a fifth or sixth density state of being, and it's oftentimes what Lacey's already mentioned, right? With the light at the end of the tunnel, like this transition that souls go through or different types of consciousness go through. That is often what I associate with Arcturian star beings. Arcturians are very into emotional and spiritual healing for humanity. So it makes sense that they serve as this transition piece for humans and souls that are coming in and out of physical forms. So this is going to look a lot like birth and death. And the space in between, essentially, and that transition space is really what Arcturus is known for. And it's kind of interesting how it's coming through to me right now because oftentimes when people have near-death experiences or very profound spiritual experiences with a loved one maybe passing and transitioning into afterlife, we hear talk of the very bright light, or some individuals will describe things as heavenly or angels or past loved ones stepping forward and there being this very bright light and it feeling very calm and peaceful and comforting. And really, when you think of it, that's all that Arcturus does. So we often see humans associate these experiences with some sort of religious connotation and using that kind of 3D construct from history as their reference point for how souls transition in and out of physical form on Earth. But really, a lot of that is done through Arcturus. And What Lacey mentioned too regarding the spiritual healing and the emotional side of things, it makes sense that it's a very non-physical type of healing or an energetic type of healing because, as we mentioned, Arcturians don't typically come through in a physical form. So that makes sense. They're going to be doing that healing on a non-physical level. They're going to exist in a higher density, in a higher state of consciousness, in a very non-physical sense. The other thing I'll note that's coming through is that when Lacey talked about near-death experiences and seeing the light or the light at the end of the tunnel, it's also an integration with Source. So a lot of individuals that go through those NDEs talk about feeling the connection to Source or seeing Source or just feeling that unity consciousness. That's really how Arcturians come through when Lacey and I channel them. It's that unity consciousness and it's that integration point with Source. So it would make sense that when people go through those experiences, they see the light, they enter the tunnel, or they connect to Source. Arcturian Starseeds are very present when souls are reaching that state of consciousness. Oftentimes, you will see people refer to Arcturus as the angel kingdom or the angel realm, and that just has to do with being a realm in that 5D and 6D densities. So it's just that higher vibration that is often associated with the angelic kingdom or the angelic realm. The other thing they're bringing through is it doesn't matter what words you use to describe this process with. So if it's more comfortable for you to use traditional religious or biblical terms, totally fine. We try to use words like source and things like that to describe the process or the transition. And they are very used to the different 3D labels, if you will, and belief systems that they are put into, actually. Now, because Arcturians have such a high state of consciousness and they're in that higher density, 5D or 6D, we don't necessarily experience them on Earth as much as other star beings. When you make contact with them, it's going to be from that higher state of consciousness. And we see less of them seated on Earth. I would say, in Lacey and my experience, we don't encounter very many Arcturian star seeds seated on Earth because they are that higher density. It takes a tremendous amount of effort for them to try to condense down to a physical form. So even if you're a human being having an interaction with them, it's going to be very much in that higher density, in that energetic form, or in that light form. Or astral realm might be more of the common theme for you to experience them. But she's right, we don't see a ton of Arcturian starseeds seated here. And when we do see them, it's actually more rare than when we meet a niche starseed type. Definitely. I also think that when we do encounter them, they often are doing more of a spiritual, emotional healing role for humans because that's really one of the trademarks and values above all else that Arcturians have. That's their superpower, if you will, and what they're known for facilitating. And it's not just for humans, it's for all souls, right? The Arcturus realm is really for the transition period, and it's really a place for you to go and integrate life lessons. So, soul transitions, they go through the tunnel, if you will, and follow the lights. And this is where they're going to do life review. This is where they're going to integrate lessons, integrate what they learned during that incarnation, and really understand it before they decide what's next for me. And that's how they've always described their role, which is actually a pretty beautiful thing. We see specific roles, but we don't see a lot of that transition part of the role. So it's kind of cool that they're talking a lot about their role for humans and non-humans and essentially all souls that want to work with them. When they are seated on Earth, oftentimes they appear as alchemizers or transmuters. And this is going to be, again, very non-physical type of healing. It's happening in a higher density, in a higher state of consciousness, and it's going to be intangible healing. So whether that comes through as somebody who's a spiritual healer doing energy work on Earth. That could be one way it comes through, but it's very intangible. It's not going to be your medical doctors at all. It's going to be, think of it like a musician who's creating frequencies that are emanating across the planet, and that's going to be transmuting something for those human beings. So again, it's intangible types of healing that they bring to them on Earth when seated, but they're not super commonly seated on Earth at this point. Other things we notice when we channel Arcturians is how they physically appear to us. And we often see Arcturians in a very bright light. I think they're more blue than anything to me, but they can appear in different colors. I agree, they come through blue to me as well. But it's really more of that energetic state. The other traits we see with Arcturian starseeds in their human incarnations is that they tend to be introverted, almost reclusive, I describe it as, only because they do such deep transmutation work in the non-physical that they do need their own space and energy to themselves. I think of them as being like naturally charismatic when they work with groups of people and they like being around people and helping people, but they do need that time to themselves to back away, to give themselves space, and to energetically recharge themselves. I really see them as the people that are going to be living more off the grid too, but they do transmute, so naturally they have to be near humans to actually fulfill that purpose. They also are very good at transmuting energetic experiences like negativity, fear, guilt. They're just very good with those lower vibrational emotions that humans often carry in this 3D realm. And it comes through almost ambivalent. I don't want to say ambivalent, but it's that integration point. That's the best way I can describe it. It's such a balanced approach they take. And it's not that they're all positivity or positively polarized. It's not at all that. It is purely integration and a balance point. You might even call it neutrality that they approach it with, that they're able to just take it, transmute it, and help any type of soul, whether it's human or other, heal. Really interesting too when you compare them and how they come across trait-wise to other star beings, because other star beings, especially all the ones that we've talked about up until this point, have just very distinct roles where they really want to be involved in Project Earth. They really want to help humans. They really want to work on the different polarities and reach integration. And Arcturians aren't really involved in the polarity piece and the integration piece because they're already a very balanced culture of beings. So they don't need to get swept up on the different ends of the polarity spectrum nearly as much, but they do serve a role in helping people transition and integrate between incarnations. So it's a very interesting concept when you look at the different star beings and compare them to Arcturus. Their role too in Project Earth is just a little bit more external. It's a little bit more distant, right? So they do still play that role with that transition like we talked about, but it's just not on the ground. Like they're not the contractor on the ground overseeing the construction project. They're very distant. Their role is a little bit more third party to me, but we still consider them to be a galactic founder who had involvement in the structure that human incarnations play on Earth. There are Arcturian seeds that are on Earth right now because there aren't nearly as many as we see of Palladians or Orions right now. They're talking a lot about the star seeds that they've put on Earth and how they don't really care what people think of them. So they have more of a fearlessness to how they come across, but it's more about understanding visibility and a trust in knowing that their messages are going to get to whoever they need to get to, and that they understand and trust in their role. They don't need to be performative. They don't need to try too hard. And to be quite honest, they don't need people to understand them or like them. So they're pretty secure in who they are compared to what we see sometimes with other star beings. it comes through to me as this like radical commitment to their missions on Earth. It's like similar to what Lacey pulled through. It's that they don't have a lot of thought on how we perceive them. They commit to that mission at whatever level that is. They just do their thing. They're not worried what everyone thinks. That is what that radical commitment is about. They are not meant to, their seeds are not meant to scale to a large level and serve collectively. Instead, it's a more individualized approach, one by one, shifting the consciousness on Earth. And some may describe it as a stage hand rather than the actor center stage that other galactic founders and seeds are currently playing on Earth as it relates to Ascension and shifting to that new Earth consciousness.
It's a really interesting concept, and I think that radical acceptance and how they teach that and live by that is a really good example and way to describe how Arcturian starseeds are. So, as you can probably tell, this episode is a very different energetic feeling than listening to the Orion or the Palladian or the Earth's Inception episode. And that's because as we talk, as we go into this and we're channeling the information, each star being comes through differently. So, Arcturians, as we said, being that emotional, spiritual healing, being that calm and peaceful energy, you can tell like we just are speaking slower, we're speaking differently than we do in different episodes. And so, just a couple pieces of information that are coming through that I do want to share because they would like us to share that in this episode is about emotions. They are talking about how humans assign emotions to things and these experiences. So, as star beings, Arcturians don't have the same emotional attachment that humans do to memories or past events or experiences. So they're just talking about how their work with transmutation has a lot to do with human emotions and how humans assign a lot of meaning to experiences through their 3D emotions because we're all here to have 3D experiences and obviously emotions arise. That's part of the 3D experience on Earth, but they don't have the same emotional attachment that we do. So when souls are transitioning through their tunnel or gateway, whatever you want to call it, they have a really unique way of being detached from all of those emotions because they don't feel emotions the way humans do. So the reminder here in this channeled message is how we assign emotions to experiences and actions and behaviors. Because oftentimes, as humans, we will see someone do something or say something, and it will make us feel a certain way. Maybe it's not a positive emotion. Maybe someone says something and then it makes you feel bad, but you don't always speak up and say, hey, I didn't appreciate that comment that you made. You don't stand up for yourself. So it's about how we assign our emotions to different behaviors and memories, and how not everything needs an emotion attached to it. This is really a really weird example, but it's what they're showing me. Maybe someone tries to throw something away in a public park, but the wrapper blows out of the garbage bin, and a little Palladian starseed's like, are you kidding me? They're littering. That person might not have intentionally done that. Or the stories that we create when we see things in public, right? Maybe you see a piece of trash on the ground and you're like, wow, really? What kind of human being is going to litter on Earth? But you don't know the backstory. So oftentimes, as humans, we create these emotions and narratives and stories to explain why things are the way they are. And not everything needs an emotional story or attachment or narrative to explain why it is the way it is. Yeah, I just immediately go back to the definition of emotion, which is like energy in motion. And I think that it's interesting because there's such a non-physical light being that really transmutes things on that energetic level. So it makes sense that they would totally be talking about energy in motion right now, emotion. But I think that message coming through makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I probably could be integrating into my own healing lessons too. Like what comes up for me, I totally see where I can assign emotion to things that probably don't even need to have emotion. And the other thing coming up
is actually power of belief. I know Lacey and I have channeled this before in disclosure discussions, but really just relating back to the power we hold in our beliefs. And once we decide what we believe in and commit to that belief, we can automatically start finding evidence to reinforce that belief and essentially start hardwiring that circuit in our brain to have the reaction it does to whatever it is that triggers that belief. So that's the other thing being brought up. It's just related to beliefs and how we can find evidence to reinforce our beliefs. And when we do experience things that are contrary to our beliefs, what comes up within us? Does it open our mind? Does it cause us to vehemently deny the other belief from another person or another situation? Does it cause us to commit more to the belief that we have and feel like this is the one right way it should be? So it's this questioning process and an understanding that there are multiple ways to view things. There are multiple ways to experience humanity on Earth, and that is what ascension and integration are about. Acceptance and balance across all the different possibilities out there in belief, action, and decision making.
Well, the Arcturians bringing through some deep, deep emotional thoughts for you to ponder in this episode. But this is typically how Arcturians are. They're very cool, calm, and collected. They're very laid back and chill, but they have a deeper perspective, if you will, of how we interact in this 3D Earth environment as humans and how we create our own realities using our emotions. Because emotions are very powerful, right? This is how you manifest. You can hold that energetic container and the energy of what you're manifesting, your reality shifts a lot faster.
Energy flows where it goes. So the more you focus on it, the more you're going to create based on what you're focusing on. So we'll close down the container today on Arcturians. Hopefully this was helpful if you feel like you resonate and are Arcturian Starseed. I think that would be interesting to hear your perspective, so you'll have to let us know in the comments possibly. But next up, we will be moving to Andromeda.